Hi, everybody. Be with you in a minute. I'm just going to share to a few places. Bring your questions. Yes, bring your questions indeed. Bring your questions indeed. Hello, everybody. Once again, I'll be with you in a minute. I still have to share some. Bring your questions indeed. Okay, I find myself in competition with Bernie here. That was not intended. I read somewhere that Bernie was going to be having his town hall at 8 o'clock tonight, and that there were a number of others scheduled. So I figured I was safe to go on at 9, as usual. Given the fact that he's having a town hall, though, I certainly won't be put out if or all of you decide to only pay attention to that particular town hall. I fully understand that. Uh, anyway, I have an amazing show planned for you tonight. Sorry. Find myself in competition. I think I have an amazing show for you tonight. Can you hear me, by the way? Can everybody hear me? Are all echoes gone and so on? Yeah, says I decided to come and commune with my comrades because I've heard Sanders give the same talk a million times. Well, thank you, Dale. It's nice to have you communing with us. Okay, I personally listen to town halls and things like that. I know what Bernie is going to say, though he adds things though continuously, and that's important. But uh, he also puts things in a slightly different way from time to time. He adds, uh, and of course, depending on where he is, the crowd reaction, is very different. And I find it fascinating to evaluate that. So I try to listen to him as much as I can. In fact, he's coming here to Leesburg, Virginia, which is close to where I live, on Saturday in the afternoon. Okay, and Bonnie and I are going to go over there and see if we are able to get in. Uh, we've sent in our RSVPs already, so I may be talking about that on Saturday night, but that should be very interesting. Okay, Dale says, laugh out loud. I could practically give Bernie's speech by now. Yes, I've also had that feeling from time to time, though for reasons I stated, I never find it very boring. Okay, let's go now. Let me get rid of something going on here. Unbidden by me. Okay, I got rid of that. Uh, I would like to switch to the article view now and give you what are supposedly the final results of the Nevada caucus. I don't know if you've all seen that as yet. You may have seen that. You may not have seen it. But now, with 2097 of 2097 precincts reporting, and the delegates' equivalents at 100%, and the first alignment at 100%, and the final alignment at 100%, these are supposedly the results. Okay, the delegate equivalents, Bernie Sanders, 6,788. Equivalents, and Joe Biden, 2,927 delegate equivalents. Those are, I understand, they are county delegates to a state convention. Mayor Pete, 2,073 equivalents. Warren, 1,406. Steyer, 682. Klobuchar, 603. So percentage-wise, that's 46.8% for Bernie, 20.2% for Joe Biden, 14.3% for Mayor Pete. So Mayor Pete doesn't make the 15% the threshold statewide. So my understanding of the rules in Nevada are that he shouldn't be able to get any delegates. Now that remains to be seen. I'm not sure I have that right. I'm not sure it includes all technicalities, but if he remains under 15%, okay, in the face of his protests and his screaming about having to have a recount, okay, and cheating, and I mean I can't say what's going to happen there, but if things stay the same as they are now, he will not get any delegates. The only people who will get delegates are Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And Bernie should be getting something like 2.3 or 2.4 times the delegates that Joe Biden will be getting. So, roughly, I think that probably translates to 70% of the delegates. Okay, and now when I'm talking delegates, I'm talking about 70% of the delegates to the national convention from that state. And Joe Biden will have 30% of the delegates to the national convention from that state. Now, I have only one caveat about this. Okay, only one misgiving. When I look at the total, okay, of votes, it seems to me that that total is roughly 100,000 votes. Okay, I estimated it off the top of my head. I didn't take a calculator to it. But I believe it comes to very, very close to 100,000. Now, we've been told, and all the articles I've seen say, that the early vote, the pre-caucus day vote, totaled 75,000 people. I don't have any articles that cite the caucus day vote. But assuming that the caucus day vote is likely to be as large or larger as the early vote, and that suggests that there are an awful lot of votes which are missing here. In other words, the way I am reading things, based on the things I've read, I would have expected that with 75,000 early votes, we might have 130,000 total votes, 140,000 total votes, 150,000 total votes. Now, this is still much heavier voting in the last caucus when 84,000 turned out. Okay, so the 100,000 here is certainly a bigger total. Okay, but what I'm saying is, what I've read doesn't make, based on what I've read, the 100,000 votes doesn't quite make sense to me. There should be many more votes than that. Perhaps as many even as 50,000 more votes than that. So what happened to the early votes? Weren't they counted? The word I got on the night of the caucus was that nothing was pre-counted, that they had not yet counted any of those votes. So I'd like to see some clarification on this. I'd like to see what happened there. Now, I don't know if it would change the outcome or not. I think it probably would. But I'd just like to see an honest process. And I'm sure you would like to see, Kay, an honest process also. I think under the hood here, this will turn out to have been a very, very strange process. The victory of Bernie Sanders notwithstanding. Okay, next article, which deals with the title of, or I should say, tonight's topic, and that is the people versus the oligarch. That's an article that appeared today in Common Dreams by Owen Higgins, and the subtitle is that Bloomberg is planning an all-out media assault on Sanders ahead of Super Tuesday. Okay, so according to the article, new reporting on Monday reveals that the mini Michael, whose record spending has already propelled him to the top tier of the 2020 primary race, is preparing a full-scale and multi-pronged attack on Senator Bernie Sanders with a massive media onslaught against the Democratic front runner. There it is, Bernie finally called the front runner. According to CNBC, which broke the story, his strategy will involve spending huge sums of his limitless money on uh, online ads, okay, or digital ads, publishing opposition research, and pushing surrogates to appear on TV and write op-eds against Bernie ahead of Super Tuesday. In other words, it's pretty much over the next week. Now, the primary in South Carolina, well, I shouldn't actually say that. The primary in South Carolina is this Saturday. Yeah, so Super Tuesday is a week from tomorrow. So, according to Sagar and Jetty, the Bloomberg, the machine turns its billions onto Sanders in a first test of what the general election would look like. Sagar tweeted this. Okay, and a Dutch economist and a member of the Labour Party of the Netherlands, a guy by the name of Martin Wiedemeyer, put it as a struggle between one of the world's richest men and the movement. The people versus the oligarch, said Mr. Wiedemeyer, who put it very well. FEC filings show his campaign, the Bloomberg campaign, spent $220 million in ad buys in January alone. Campaign has spent over $900 billion total. Okay, this is according to Bloomberg News itself. Okay, and Axios tweeted that his surging profile has been boosted by the volume of coverage about him. In the first week of his campaign, when he was polling in the low single digits, there were 24,800 articles about Michael Bloomberg. Warren had about 17.3 thousand articles. Bernie, 5.2 thousand articles. Klobuchar, 2.2 thousand articles. And that's K articles. That's not 25 articles. That's 24.8 thousand articles. And the Higgins article says that cash flow into the coffers of news networks, okay, and newspapers has created an uncomfortable situation for for-profit outlets who expected to cover the billionaire. The spending appeared to result in more coverage, okay, as Axios said, okay, on February 20th. And so then that gives you the figures I just cited. Actually, this is a little different. It's for the first 6 weeks of his campaign. He had, I think the figures that I just cited were a little bit wrong. Let's see why I got that wrong. Now, there was a mistake in the article's quotation, okay, of the figures. They appear to be 24.8K articles, yes, compared to 17.3 for Warren, okay, and 11.954, okay, 11.954 Really, if we round 12.0K articles for Bernie rather than 5.2K for Bernie, 5.2K articles for Mayor Pete, and 2.2K for Amy Klobuchar. That sounds a little bit more like it, actually. CNBC reports the mayor has decided to focus all of his energy and bank account on the Vermont senator through the Super Tuesday contest on March 3rd, where 14 states are set to hold their primaries. According to CNBC, what Bloomberg did was to attempt to paint Bernie as a past ally of the NRA, a gun advocacy group that Bernie has fought for over a decade. I'm sorry, that Bloomberg has fought for over a decade. Also, the attacks on Sanders will also attempt to highlight the negative aspects of his record on race relations, both as a congressman and senator, the sources said. This comes after Sanders, now seen as the front runner in the Democratic Party, has taken aim at Bloomberg for his support of a policing policy known as stop and frisk that often targeted people who were black and also Latino. This is a bold move for Bloomberg, given his history of both racist comments and racist policies. Yes, it's a bold move, comes right out of Karl Rove's playbook, which is, by the way, to attack your opponent on his supposed strength. Okay, but Rove, of course, had no intention of doing this in any kind of honest way, but just throw everything you can at him and see which of your lies will stick. And the news came 2 days after Joe Lockhart, a long-term Democratic strategist and former press secretary to Bill Clinton, in an opinion piece for CNN, called on Bloomberg to take the front runner out. And David Sirota tweeted, corporate consultant Joe Lockhart just yesterday, quote, but Bloomberg needs to use the next $400 million in ad spending to attack Sanders. $400 million blitz against Bernie Sanders between now and Super Tuesday? Is that possible? Will anything be on the airwaves other than the Bloomberg smears of Bernie? So, it is going to be the people versus the oligarch. Eric Levitz of the Intelligentsia suggested in a tweet that a full-bore assault, from Bloomberg, could be just what the Sanders campaign needs to prepare for a general election contest with the incumbent, President you-know-who. Quote, this will be a good test of the durability of Bernie's strength in polls against Trump, said Eric Levitz. If Bloomberg's wall-to-wall character assassination attempt doesn't erase Bernie's advantage in those polls, there's no reason to think he can't hold strong when the general election comes around. I think that's right. If Bernie can withstand a $400 million blitz between now and Super Tuesday, he can withstand anything that Trump is going to throw against him. I think the good thing is that when Bloomberg tries some of his attacks tomorrow night in the debate, that he'll have to directly contest with Bernie over the truth of those particular charges. And if that's what happens, there's no guarantee that he's going to do very well. So, Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Bernie was doing something constructive, or his campaign was, or his Senate staff was. Specifically, I guess it's his campaign. On the issue of free child care and pre-K for all, what Bernie did was to introduce a new plan for free child care and pre-K for all. After a lengthy introduction, which I've linked to, which you can read, concerning all the problems people have with getting child care and how much it costs them, I'm going to skip to what Bernie says he will do as the President of the United States. In other words, the promise. As President, Bernie will. Let me puff this up a little so you can read it more easily, or follow me more easily anyway. He will guarantee every child in America free, full day, full week, high quality child care from infancy through age 3, regardless of income. Provide that child care for 10 hours a day and ensure programs operate at times to serve candidates who work, serve parents who work at non-traditional hours. Like, for example, sales clerks at the retail department stores. Okay, and other people who are working traditional hours. Building off the success of the existing federal child care programs. The Universal Free Child Care Program will be funded by the federal government and administered by state agencies and tribal governments in cooperation and in collaboration with public school districts and other relevant agencies and organizations. The federal funding will cover the full cost of child care services and pay for the workers as well as capital expenses. As a condition of funding, the federal government will set quality standards for the program, including minimum wages for workers and mandated low child to adult the school ratios and small group sizes for delivery of services. The program will guarantee that every child has access to a full week pre-kindergarten education, starting at age 3, regardless of income. It'll be funded in full by the federal government and be locally administered. Will ensure the resources, rights, and expertise are provided to children who have disabilities. We will ensure students with disabilities will receive the support they need and are included with their peers from an early age. Now, this doesn't say so, but obviously from the wording, it's going to cover autistic children. Further sub-bullet point. Require the Secretaries of Education and Health and Human Services to develop federal standards for ensuring that all federally funded child care settings include children with disabilities and do not discriminate on the basis of a disability. Expand funding within the Institute for Education Sciences for research on how early childhood professionals can best support children with disabilities, including those with significant cognitive disabilities and complex medical needs in natural environments and inclusive early childhood education settings. Isn't this a wonderful program, everyone? Ensure that students with disabilities who need it get access to augmentative and alternative communication technology and the services necessary to make it meaningful from a young age. This will include issuing new guidance through the Department of Education to ensure that students who receive an augmentative and alternative communication device through their school are able to keep it outside of school hours as well as if they change school districts. Invest in new technical assistance resources within the Department of Education to support general education teachers in helping children with disabilities develop pre-literacy and literacy skills in general education classrooms. So while Bernie is getting smeared, while he's getting attacked, while $400 million is getting thrown against him within the space of a few weeks, by Oligarch, one of Bernie's answers is to release a really wonderful program that will save families thousands upon thousands of dollars per year, and in that way augment their usable take-home pay for discretionary purposes, and also provide first-class educational services with liberal funding and good wages going on. Double funding for the maternal, infant, and early childhood home visiting program, MIECHV, which supports home visiting workers from nurses, from mental health professionals, from social workers, and other support professionals for families with young children who live in low income and at risk communities. Would Michael Bloomberg ever support something like this? Would he ever do that or even think about it? Past Bernie's Universal School Meals Act that he introduced with Representative Ilhan Omar to provide year-round free universal school meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks to every child in child care and pre-K. Would Amy Klobuchar support anything like this? Would Mayor Buttigieg support anything like this? Would Elizabeth Warren come out with anything like this? Maybe Elizabeth Warren would go a good deal of the way that Bernie is going here, but not all the way. Next, construct, also renovate or rehabilitate the child care facilities and preschools we need throughout the country. Ensure that small centers and home-based child care operations can apply for this funding for upgrades but also the renovations. Enact Bernie's Thurgood Marshall Plan for public education to make transformative investments in our public education system to ensure the developmental gains made by implementing universal child care and pre-K are built upon when children start their K through 12 education, and further bullet points, substantially reduce preschool class sizes, increase access to English as a second language Instruction, for those for whom it is a second language. Ensure children have access to health and wellness services. Desegregate our entire public education system, including child care and pre-kindergarten. Spend $50 billion over the next decade to substantially expand access to summer and after-school programs, teen centers, and also tutoring. Sorry, looks like my camera has gone out again. I will fix that, or I will try to fix that. Should be easy. Okay. Let me see if it's fixed. Apparently it is, and you can see my smiling face once again. Then we go into an area Bernie calls supporting our child care and early education workforce. Bonnie says she can see me, so I guess you can see me too, right? He points to the importance of the job of taking care of nurturing and educating our youngest children. Points out that they're the future of our country. And he says, despite the skyrocketing costs of child care and early education, child care workers on the average make just $11 an hour. Even though they take on the most important job in America, caring for our children. Child care workers, 96% of whom are women and are disproportionately women of color, are paid starvation wages. And he goes further into this particular problem. I'll skip over this, except to say he points out that child care and early education jobs are green jobs. Caring for and educating our children are essential components of creating a socially, economically, and ecologically sustainable future. As we transform our energy system and our economy to combat the threat of climate change, ensuring that these critical low-carbon care and education jobs are well paid and secure must be a priority. And then it goes into a list, it goes into a list, of bullet points as what he will do as president. He's going to more than double the number of early childhood educators in this country from more than 1.3 billion to more than 1.3 million to more than 2.6 million. He's going to guarantee that everyone working in the field of early education has a living wage, ensure all are compensated commensurate with their experience and training, and ensure all lead teachers are paid no less than similarly qualified kindergarten teachers. And by the way, he has guaranteed, in other contexts, that the minimum salary for any teacher inside of the United States will become $60,000 per year, which is roughly twice as much as what the current figure for that is in much of the United States. So that in itself is a pretty revolutionary thing to do. He's going to require that anyone providing direct service to young children have at least a Child Development Associate's a CDA credential. It's going to require all assistant teachers have at least an associate's degree in early childhood education or child development, and require all lead preschool teachers have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education or child development. He's going to guarantee support for existing and new early care, and for learning professionals to get the education required to care for and teach young children, within a reasonable phase-in period, and ensure that these professionals reflect uh, and linguistic, and racial and ethnic diversity of the communities they serve. He will make public colleges tuition and debt-free, invest $5 billion in high-quality teacher preparation programs at historically black colleges and by universities, minority serving institutions of higher education, the MSIs, and tribal colleges like the residency programs that provide clinical experience and and also experience in mentoring, and increase other higher education supports that enable students to afford the high quality preparation necessary to support the development and learning of young children. He's going to provide funding for union training fund programs to ensure early care and learning professionals can receive training through these successful programs. And by the way, that's also going to strengthen the unions and the union movement, that a number of other things in his agenda will strengthen. He'll ensure that all early childhood educators have access to ongoing, high quality professional development that includes coaching and and also the mentoring the students. He's going to provide early childhood workers with strong protections before trying to unionize, sector-wide collective bargaining, workers' rights, workplace safety, and fair scheduling, regardless of immigration status, and that they have the information and tools they need to act on these rights, okay, and to act on the protections of the Act through the passage of the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights plan, introduced by Representative Pramila Jayapal, and by enacting Bernie's workplace democracy plan. So, isn't that a wonderful addition to his program? I certainly think it is. I certainly think it's a dynamite thing to run on. Okay, and the money, I can't even imagine how many thousands of dollars it's going to save certain families. For those with children who have real serious handicaps, which require many thousands of dollars to support over a very long period of time, this program will be revolutionary. It's a wonderful addition to his agenda. I hope he talks about it so people understand it, because it will be so important for so many people. On that note, let me consider your comments and questions. I hope you brought some questions and some comments. Okay, I hope that Bernie's still on a roll at CNN. I suspect that he is. He seems to be on a roll everywhere lately. Susan Eldridge and Matt Waldy were here. Susan says Bernie is killing it on his CNN town hall. I'll be happy to watch it after this is over. Steve says early voting is underway here in California. Hi, Kay, and hi, Elaine McForbes. Nice to see you. Hi, Devora. Nice to see you, my daughter Devora. And Rob has joined. Hey, Rob, how are you? Rob says Donald Trump eats burned steak. Mike likes his medium rare. Okay, and okay, Linda Evangeline has joined. Hi, Margot Shepard has joined. Okay, says I got my absentee ballot and will be voting in the next a few days. Very strange, as there are all these judges in there with no one running against them. Have to check that out better before I mail it back in. Jeff Ginter's joined. Hey, Jeff, nice to see you. And Linda Evangeline says, so according to Bernie and the DNC, Russia was able to spend a measly $60K on Google and Facebook ads to sway the 2016 vote to elect Trump. It had nothing to do with the fact that HRC was a corrupt Wall Street bailout supporter, a NAFTA supporter, TPP supporter, frack the world warmonger, etc., nor that the DNC admitted to the rigging of the election. Nope. According to Bernie and the DNC, it was Russian interference. If that be the case, our candidates need to follow the Russian protocol for their ad campaigns and save the millions for a good cause. How about sending those extra millions to help Flint? Linda says, free childcare. What about the toxic chemicals that are sprayed on the fruits and vegetables that are fed to our children in daycares and schools? I don't know, but I'll bet you Bernie's got a plan for that. Here we go again. Free universal school meals. This food is not organic and contains toxic pesticides and herbicides that make our kids sick, lead to cancer, and cause all kinds of other health issues. Why does no one talk about this? I'm all for talking about it, Linda. All for talking about it. Not only am I all for talking about it, I think Bernie will be all for talking about that too. And I suspect that the standards he's talking about for pre-K are going to include standards like that. That they're not going to be able to get away with cheap food. Kay says, I have a gardening group on Facebook and I talk about it all the time, Linda. Linda says, can you post the link? I follow EWG and others too. Kay says, I might be able to add you, Linda, if that is what you are asking. And Linda said, yes, can you do that? Can you alert me? Kay says, it's a gardening group, though, not just ecological, although I add that whenever I can. And Linda says, I'm a gardener and grow all organic. I would love to be a part of a group of gardeners. So, yep, community of practice for gardeners. Sounds great. Kay says, me too, Joanne. He kicked ass and took names as usual. I see my attendance is going up a little here. Must be because Bernie finished. Okay, so the war over the next week is going to be really striking. There is going to be a very big an unprecedented media bombing campaign, which is going to be directed at Bernie Sanders. And we have to support him on social media, okay, in any way we can. Undoubtedly, Bloomberg will be employing lots and lots of trolls to oppose us. We have to make him regret that on social media. Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday is key. Between California and Texas, there are almost 700 delegate votes at stake. If Bernie could pull off a miracle and shut out all the other candidates in California and in Texas, that would put him in the driver's seat for this campaign. The momentum created by something like that would just bring all the people who love a winner into his camp. There won't be any other place to go. Kay asks whether Linda got a notice yet. Oh, Bloomberg is hiring prison inmates for his phone bank. Wonderful. How much is he going to pay the prison inmates? Do we know yet? Is he going to pay them a minimum wage? Or is he going to pay them at the prison wage of $1 an hour or whatever it is? Maybe a phone bank isn't going to work. I mean, I personally do not take phone calls easily. Okay? If people call me and they do not leave a message, they never make contact. So, Joanne, what is 3 per day? He's hiring them to do, he's paying them $3 a day? Or he's hiring them to do 3 calls a day? Amazon is paying prisoners about $3 a day. Steve says good night and bye all. See you, Steve. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. That's incredible. What a scandal. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. That's a scandal. Okay. Any more comments or questions? Linda Evangeline says Bernie is a trillion times more empathetic to the health, safety, and welfare of the people than Trump. But he did campaign for the despicable HRC, just saying. He did. But I think we have to emphasize that if he had not campaigned for her And if he had not been a good party person in 2016, he might have lost his status in the Senate, specifically the position that he has on the budget committee in the Senate, which has allowed him to do many good things. Okay. And of course, he wouldn't have been able to run in this campaign. They would not have let him run. They would have excluded him, simply saying that he was not a real Democrat. So by doing everything he could for Hillary, he played safe and he got to fight another day. He got to fight another campaign. So, I think that's important. I was upset at the time in 2016 also when he did that. If I were him, I probably would have gone to a third party effort with the Movement for a People's Party. But it's really hard to argue with what happened in the end. He's now conducting a much stronger campaign than he did in 2016. He appears to have a far better chance to win and a far better chance to actually make change than he would have had, most probably, if he had run as a third party candidate. We were all disappointed. We felt very, very badly about it. Okay? And if he does it again, if he loses, okay, and he does it again, I think we will have all had it up to here. Simply because this campaign is really our last chance. If we don't get a fairly good Congress and we don't get the presidency, we're not going to be able to stave off the climate emergency. Right now, we have about 11 years, counting 2020, when nothing will get done of substance simply because of the election. So from 2021 through 2030, we have no time to lose. We've got to do this on an emergency basis. So Linda says, I would go down with the ship. Never could I be a hypocrite. Another reason I love but Tulsi. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to say that's not the right thing to do, but from my standpoint, I don't want to go down with the ship quite yet. We still have a chance to get him in 2020 and do what we need to do to pass a Medicare for All bill and to deliver climate justice and all the other things that he wants to do. Okay, and I think if he can do that, it certainly will justify his decision in 2016 to live to fight another day. Sandy says, we have to get Bernie or it's not happening. Yeah, I completely agree. We have to get Bernie or it's not happening. Because only Bernie has us. Only Bernie has the movement. He's not beholden to HRC. He has promised the DNC that he will support the candidate that they select. If they rig the election against him, then I think he has grounds to say, well, when I agreed, I was agreeing to a fair primary. But you rigged the primary, so I have no further obligation to deal with you. Dale says the Clintons are has-beens, but has-beens who still have a lot of influence, as was shown in Iowa. When the Clintonites in Iowa managed to rig things for Mayor Buttigieg. Joanne mentions MMT progressives. Yeah, that's a lot of us. We are MMT progressives. I'm an MMT progressive who's written 7 ebooks that apply MMT. They're Kindle ebooks and they're for sale, at Amazon. They're great books. I think that you should look them up sometime. And while I'm at it, let me remind you to please share, like, and subscribe when this video goes up on YouTube, which will be soon after we're finished here tonight. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com, Joe_Firestone. So that's before I forget to do that. And Sandy says, I think that's exactly what he will do. He is not playing. I hope so, Sandy. I don't know. Once he gives his word, Bernie is just extremely committed to it. And even though he would have justification if they cheat him, I don't know if he could reason in that way and run as an independent. But I think this time the situation is so serious that he has to do that. He doesn't really have any choice. Okay? I think for the sake of the movement and for the sake of doing something about the climate, he has to run third party and try to gain the presidency in that way, because nobody else is going to move seriously to fix this problem except for Bernie Sanders. He's the only one who's remotely serious in terms of the plans that he's given us thus far. All the other candidates are simply playing around. Any other comments or questions? Sandy says he's an honorable man and would keep his word to the people. Yeah, but the question is which people? Which people? He's given his word to the party people. So, the impact of the Nevada caucuses. Sandy, you think us. I hope you're right, Sandy. I certainly hope that you're right because I think this is our last chance and his last chance, too. But going back to the Nevada case, I think the impact of that has been very great on the media in terms of the immediate impact. They seem to be now actually entertaining the idea that Bernie just has a movement behind him too powerful to really be opposed. So I hope they start to adjust and they start to give him fair coverage. That would make a great difference in this particular campaign. It would be a big help. But I don't know if they'll go the whole way, especially at MSNBC. Their faith in their own thinking was shaken. It was shaken. It was rocked by what happened. But they will seek whatever rationalizations and excuses they can bring themselves to formulate. Now, good night, Kay. And they will try to go back to the previous position. They're just not comfortable with the position of acceding to the popular movement. But maybe that will change over the next week and a half. If Bernie wins in South Carolina and then moves on to really blitz everybody in Super Tuesday, then those folks are going to have to change their tune. They really will. I don't see them continuing to fight after that because, frankly, I don't see them as fighters. They're not fighters. They're people who are used to compromising with the way things are. If Bernie can persuade them by winning overwhelmingly Super Tuesday and in South Carolina, he's going to become the way things are for them. And then maybe they will be allies against Trump in the rest of this campaign. So Linda Evangeline asks, why did Tulsi not get the boom of followers like Bernie did last time around? Now, the reason why was because Tulsi wasn't able to build a movement. She wasn't able to build a movement. Okay, I think perhaps she wasn't able to because she based her whole campaign rather than around her congressional record and run on her whole congressional record. She based her whole campaign on the anti-regime change position. She didn't talk much about her green ideas. And she didn't talk about the idea of a just transition to a green New Deal. And she didn't talk about a Green New Deal. She could have talked about her own Green New Deal. But she didn't want to play with that slogan. But that's a powerful slogan if you're appealing to people who are in the Democratic Party. To evoke the legacy of Franklin Roosevelt is very important when you're running against the establishment in this party. And Tulsi was running as a Democrat. I didn't see her ever in her campaign talking about FDR. I never saw her talking about Dr. King or talking about the Kennedys. She would not tie into the traditions of the past in the Democratic Party. I think that's an aspect of Bernie's campaign that most people don't really talk about. He's connecting to the better traditions within the Democratic Party. He's connecting to past times of achievement when the party really moved America forward. And in part, that's what's driving his campaign. Not only is he wrapping himself in democratic socialism, which does not do that, it's a step forward, but he's wrapping himself in the robes of the Green New Deal. And he's wrapping himself in the legacy of Dr. King. Those are powerful things that he is connecting to, which Tulsi never did. She didn't even fully connect us to her own record in the Congress, which is an excellent record. And she didn't get started fast enough in raising money from the grassroots. He could build on the foundations he laid in 2016. So he was quickly raising big money. That allowed him to organize on the ground in a way that she could not do. She was like him in so many ways, but so unlike him, in many others. And the ways in which she was unlike him were very, very important for her campaign. Dale says they'd better get behind Sanders or they'll be electing Donald Trump to a second term. That will be tragic. Sandy asks, was she on board with Medicare for All? She's a co-sponsor of H.R. 1384. Now, her position is that she wanted to add something to it. But I've never really been completely clear on the specific changes that she wants to make to it. I've looked at her site since she came out with the idea that she wants to improve upon it. But I never saw a new plan stated in so many words. So I don't think her marketing of her disagreement with either Bernie's program or H.R. 1384 was well done. Okay, I just don't think that that was very well done. And Joanne says, Dale Weaver, it's agreed we'll be living in a dictatorship if Donald J. Trump should win again. Yeah, she did do something about MLK. Now, she did, but she hasn't really wrapped herself in MLK for the whole campaign. Yes, she did talk about those people, okay, and topics. Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of her town halls too, and they're very good. And her interviews, okay, and they are very good. But as Sandy points out, he was part of that. She was had not born yet to remember it, okay? And that was true. That is very true. So, do I prefer Tulsi to Bernie? No, I prefer Bernie to Tulsi. Why do I prefer Bernie to Tulsi? The reason why is because he has been able to build a movement. He's been able to build the movement. He's the only one who's been able to build the movement. Now, of course, he had the head start from 2016. That's why he was able to do that. Okay, young people are very prominent in his campaign, and they are overwhelmingly for him. And they are probably for him as well because he has the movement. And he also has the passion, about improving people's lives, improving the lives of people, okay, of all ages, and doing that by delivering economic justice and social justice, okay, and climate justice. He talks with passion about all those things. I don't see Tulsi Gabbard doing that to the same extent. I mean, I have no doubt that she cares about the public purpose. She speaks very well. She's very charismatic uh, as a person. But it comes back to the movement. If she doesn't have the movement, she cannot do what we need her to do, even if magically she was able to become the president tomorrow. And Linda said in reply to Sandy, you sort of did. Tulsi was not even around during the Vietnam War. That doesn't mean she doesn't get it and know the truth about that bogus war. I'm sure that she does know the truth, okay, about that war, and I trust she feels that also very deeply because of her own experience, her own personal experience in war. When it comes to foreign policy, okay, and when it comes to wars, I really trust her instincts greatly, okay, in that particular arena. But she doesn't seem to care as much about the inequality problems we have here at home, okay, as Bernie does. It's not even the specific issues. It's the drive to do justice here at home. In Bernie Sanders' case, he exhibits that drive, okay, in almost every breath he takes, okay, and everything that he publicly says. I don't think Tulsi quite comes over that way. Okay, now maybe she can learn to come over that way. I think she can. I think she'd do very well in a Bernie Sanders administration. But I just didn't see that passion in her. So I was not willing to go away from Bernie in order to support her in this particular election. But I'll tell you, okay, I like her very well. And I've also thought, but from the start, that she's a bona fide vice presidential candidate before Bernie Sanders. As far as I know right now, the two best candidates he has are Tulsi Gabbard and probably Nina Turner. The two best choices he could make that would match with him. Okay, and Linda says, I agree with the passion. I wish she got seriously angry about the wars. Well, I see her passion about that when it comes to the issue of the wars. And when it comes to how much she cares about the people who actually go over and fight, and how much, as a result, she would be dedicated to avoiding wars. I think she's great in all those respects. But I also want to see a person who would be releasing the kind of plan for education and childcare that we saw from him today, and that we can see him talking up in his campaign. Now, she was a supporter of the Medicare for All bill, as I said. She was a co sponsor of that bill. So why hasn't she been talking passionately about that? I mean, why not? The recent study from the Lancet says that there are 68,000 fatalities due to lack of insurance and to underinsurance every year due to the present system and the lack, okay, of Medicare for All. She doesn't talk about that. That's 68,000 people dying every year who do not have to die. Yes, I agree her values are real. I agree she's an excellent person. And I really like her. But I need somebody to be president who's going to be like Franklin Roosevelt, but better. But better. Not have the faults that Franklin Roosevelt had. And I see the potential for that in Bernie Sanders. I don't see it yet, okay, in Tulsi. Okay, I might see that, okay, a little later. Yes, Linda, but there's no necessary trade-off in money between the trillions spent on war as opposed to the trillions that could be spent to help the people. The reason why is because the United States is a monetary sovereign. And the fact is, we can afford to do them both. There isn't a shortage of money around here. Not from the technical standpoint of the power of the government to create the necessary money both to fight the wars and to help the people. The reason why we need to be opposed to wars is because they're killing people. They're killing our people, and they're killing literally millions of people inside the Middle East. That's why the regime change wars are so evil. That's why we have to stop them. It's not because of the trillions they cost. As I say, there's no real trade-off in that particular money. But to know that, you have to have some familiarity with MMT. And I don't think Tulsi has any relationship to MMT at all. She's been told about it in various fora, okay, at various times. But unlike Ocasio-Cortez, who has learned all about MMT, Tulsi, for some reason, felt that she didn't have to learn about it, that she could base, okay, her economics on the older dynamics of taxing and spending, okay, and borrowing. And she's never shown us any different kind, okay, of macroeconomics than that kind, okay, of macroeconomics. And that plays right into the hands of the neoliberals. And that's another reason why I didn't want to support her for the presidency. When she was part of Bernie's campaign in 2015, in 2015 and 16, the senior economic advisor to the campaign was Stephanie Kelton. And they both are fellows of the Sanders Institute. And yet, to my knowledge, she's never had any contact with Stephanie whatsoever. She never tried to learn what Stephanie Kelton had to offer. It's like she doesn't really care about the economics. And that's one reason why I think perhaps she's not ready for the presidency quite yet. Sandy points out Bernie is that person, and Sandy points out the Congress holds the purse strings, and they can appropriate the funds. And not only that, Sandy, they can also guarantee that those funds, okay, that they appropriate get into the Treasury spending account some way, somehow. They could use overt the congressional financing if they wanted to. That is, the Congress could. Okay, they could appropriate the funds, and they could see to it that they're placed in the Treasury spending account up front. Sandy points out that's a problem. She has to know how to pay for things. Okay, and Linda says, as a medic, she saw the atrocities and death. Isn't that as good as it gets to get it? It's as good as it gets to get it when it comes to war and when it comes to the damages caused by war. But it's not as good as it gets when it's time to figure out how to do something about it, how to do something about social, and economic justice at home, when the opposition is screaming at you that you're building huge debts that our grandchildren are going to have to pay for. And how does she answer that? So far as I can tell, she doesn't know how to answer that. Or she can say, by way of answering, is let us end these wars and let us spend that money on these other things that I want to spend it on. Sandy says she has to be well-rounded in her knowledge. Yes, I think she has to be more well-rounded in her knowledge than she has been. Okay, and I can suggest a website for her to go to as well. If my computer will cooperate. It's being uncooperative right now. Well, if she goes here, if Tulsi goes here, she'll find a lot of stuff on how to use the powers of the federal government to finance things. And Linda says, I still need the MMT for Dummies book. I think my blogs can be read, even in the absence of an MMT for Dummies book. But certainly Tulsi is no dummy. She could have read a few of the books that were out there even in 2015. And it wouldn't have taken that much time for her to get up to speed. But she never did it. And as I said, I've got 7 ebooks I've written, on MMT. And you can see them on my website. Just click on them. Anyway, that's a separate issue. And Bonnie is here. And she is telling me that it's my time to say goodnight. So please share, like, and subscribe this when it goes up on YouTube, and share it as much as you can on Facebook. I would certainly appreciate it. And thanks for hanging in with me for so long. I'll see you tomorrow night. And tomorrow night I will be discussing what I'll be doing is evaluating the debate. I will definitely pass this on to her campaign. Thanks. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, Linda. You're always welcome here.
Thank you for sharing.
And thank you for sharing. That's right. Sandy says, hi, Bonnie. And we have good luck with Sandys, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And we know a lot of Sandys. And we like them very much. Okay, good night, everyone. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow night. Okay, we'll have the South Carolina debates tomorrow night, and I'll be reviewing what happened. Okay, at those. And on Wednesday night, okay, I'll be doing my special again on how couples over 65 can save from Bernie's agenda. I think that should be really interesting. Sandy says, Sandy's like you too. Okay, thanks, Sandy. And good night.